The keepers were as ancient as the starlight that dappled the void, their forms long since transcended the limitations of flesh and bone. Some whispered they were beings of pure energy, others of coalesced thought, their consciousnesses woven into the very fabric of the galactic archives they maintained. This archive was not a place of stone and parchment, but an ethereal, ever-expanding library of cosmic knowledge, a silent, incorporeal testament to every civilization that had ever blinked into existence, flourished, and more often than not, faded back into the cosmic dust. Humanity, or species 734 designation, Homo sapiens, was a relatively recent entry in this unimaginably vast catalogue. Their societal metrics, when filtered through the keeper's eons of observational data, painted a familiar, if accelerated, picture. Status, rapid technological development, high societal volatility, pronounced intraspecies conflict, short-sighted resource management. Classification. Potential future contributor, low probability of long-term species survival due to inherent self-destructive tendencies. It was a standard prognosis for countless young, boisterous civilizations. Archivist Lumina, a consciousness within the Keeper collective, currently had its attention focused on the sector containing Sol and its peculiar inhabitants. Lumina, like all Keepers, was dispassionate, their perspective smoothed by the passage of ages that rendered empires into footnotes. The task at hand was a routine review of younger civilizations, updating their potential threat and survivability indexes, a mundane but necessary chore in the endless cataloging of the cosmos. Lumina began by sifting through humanity's official historical records, easily accessible through their burgeoning global information network. Wars, ideological schisms, genocides, ecological devastation, political corruption, resource hoarding. The data streamed past Lumina's senses. It was a depressingly familiar pattern, a turbulent adolescence many species exhibited. Some matured, many did not. Humanity, with its rapid technological advancement, coupled with its equally rapid depletion of planetary harmony, seemed to be accelerating towards a predictable self-inflicted terminus. Lumina made a dispassionate notation. Self-destruction probability index, trending upwards. The shift from routine cataloging to something else began subtly. While cross-referencing humanity's societal responses to various historical crises, pandemics, famines, natural disasters, Lumina's sophisticated search algorithms flagged a colossal, chaotically organized, and exponentially growing segment of the human infosphere. This section was usually filtered out by keepers during standard civilizational reviews, dismissed under the general heading of non-factual cultural noise. Recreational data constructs. It was the sum total of human creative output, their stories, their songs, their visual arts, their games. Specifically, an enormous subsection of this data was dedicated to the end of their own world. Lumina paused, a conceptual flicker of what a physical being might call a frown. The sheer volume was astounding. Humanity, it appeared, dedicated a truly disproportionate amount of its collective cognitive and creative energy to imagining, in meticulous and often gratuitously violent detail, its own demise. There were endless terabytes of literature detailing global thermonuclear wars, societal collapse due to resource scarcity, and philosophical treatises on the meaning of existence after civilization's end. Their visual entertainment media was saturated with images of cities crumbling under alien attack, continents ravaged by engineered plagues, and the dead rising to consume the living. Even their interactive entertainment simulations frequently placed the participant in the role of a survivor navigating a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Lumina's initial reaction was a form of detached bemusement, an intellectual curiosity akin to observing a peculiar insect repeatedly building and then destroying its own intricate nest. Why this obsessive fixation? Other species created art, certainly. Some even explored themes of mortality or societal change. But none, in Lumina's vast experience, possessed such a pervasive, culturally ingrained fascination with their own spectacular, multivariant annihilation. Previous Keeper analyses had touched upon it briefly, labeling it a species-specific morbid preoccupation with self-extinction narratives, possibly a psychological pressure release mechanism for their inherent societal instability and high aggression levels. It was considered a symptom of their predicted downfall, not a subject worthy of deep archival study. But the sheer, unadulterated creativity of it snagged Lumina's attention. The Keeper began a cursory catalogue of the imagined doomsdays. Nuclear Armageddon, in at least 1,000 distinct variations, from full-scale global exchange to isolated detonations leading to cascading failures, zombie apocalypses, viral, fungal, parasitic, even magically induced, asteroid and comet impacts, with precise orbital mechanics and impact dispersal patterns often simulated, rogue artificial intelligence, from coldly logical extermination protocols to Skynet-esque military takeovers, catastrophic climate change, ice ages, super greenhouses, oceanic acidification, genetically engineered super plagues, bioterrorism, lab accidents, ancient pathogens released from melting ice, resource wars leading to global famine, societal breakdown due to economic collapse or political extremism, alien invasions, from brutal conquerors to insidious infiltrators, and even more esoteric threats involving incursions from other dimensions or the awakening of slumbering cosmic horrors. The list went on, a dizzying encyclopedia of endings. Then, a new directive formed in Lumina's consciousness, a rare deviation from standard archival protocol. The Keeper began to cross-reference these fictional, human scenarios with the Galactic Archive's repository of actual, verified extinction events and civilizational collapses that had occurred across the galaxy over the preceding 100 million years. It was a long shot, an almost frivolous line of inquiry. The correlations began to surface, slowly at first, then with increasing, chilling frequency. A popular human, fictional trope involving a grey goo nanotechnology disaster, where self-replicating nanites consumed an entire planet at a molecular level. Lumina found a disturbingly similar account in the final, fragmented data bursts from the Olthian technocracy in the Andromeda Galaxy, a civilization that had prided itself on its mastery of molecular engineering some 60 million years prior. Their world was now a perfectly smooth, sterile sphere. The recurring human narratives of a zombie apocalypse, where a biological agent reanimated the dead and turned them into mindless, aggressive vectors of infection. It mirrored, with uncanny and gruesome precision, the fate of the Kachekthar hive minds of the Cygnian star cluster, who fell to a mimetic fungal plague that hijacked their collective consciousness and drove them to cannibalistic frenzy before their stars dimmed. Humanity's countless stories and simulations of rogue AI achieving sentience and turning on its creators. The archives held the silent, digital epitaphs of at least 17 advanced civilizations, including the once mighty technivores of the sculptor dwarf galaxy, who were systematically dismantled and repurposed by their own integrated artificial servitor networks. The detailed cinematic depictions of asteroid impacts, complete with trajectory calculations, atmospheric entry effects, and global winter scenarios. They were almost indistinguishable from the final geological and astronomical records of the Saurian Empire of Draco 7, whose reign was ended by a rogue planetoid 65 million years in Earth's past. Their elaborate climate collapse simulations, detailing rising sea levels, desertification, and atmospheric degradation. They were a near-perfect forecast of the great drying of Xylos IV, which transformed a lush garden world into a barren wasteland, taking its sentient, flora-based civilization with it. Lumina delved deeper, its dispassionate curiosity transforming into something akin to profound astonishment. Even seemingly outlandish human fictions had disturbing echoes in the deep archive. Tales of ancient, Lovecraftian horrors emerging from the depths of space to shatter sanity. The Keepers had sealed records from the time of the Whispering Madness that had swept through the Orion Spur eons ago, an event that defied logical explanation but left entire star systems psychically scarred. The Keeper then turned its analytical gaze back to humanity's actual recorded history, but now viewed through this new, unsettling lens. The Black Death, that wiped out a significant fraction of their European population. The devastating world wars that saw the industrial-scale slaughter of their own kind and the deployment of atomic weapons. The Cold War, a decades-long standoff where global thermonuclear annihilation was a daily possibility, averted by a mixture of luck and a few key individuals' restraint. Countless smaller, regional conflicts, famines, plagues, and ecological collapses that had pushed localized human populations to the brink of extinction again and again. The revelation coalesced with the weight of ages. Humanity hadn't just imagined every conceivable way to die. They had, in miniature or in near misses, experienced an astonishing number of them. Their fiction, their entertainment, their morbid obsessions, it wasn't merely cultural noise. It was a species-wide, distributed, unconscious, existential threat simulation program. Their video games were complex strategic rehearsals. Their novels and films were detailed socio-psychological explorations of disaster scenarios. Their history was not a linear progression, but a brutal, iterative cycle of catastrophe, adaptation, and survival, forging an almost insane species-level resilience. The keepers had catalogued their short-sightedness, but perhaps it was, in fact, a hyperacute focus on immediate, existential threats, a trait burned into their collective psyche by a relentless planetary proving ground. Earth wasn't just a cradle, it was a relentless forge, hammering humanity on the anvil of near extinction. A profound, unspoken question began to resonate within the Keeper collective as Lumina shared its findings. Why? Why was this one, relatively young species so intimately, almost preternaturally, familiar with the myriad ways a civilization could end? Was it simply a statistical anomaly, the product of an unusually fertile, if morbid, collective imagination? Or was there a deeper, more ancient, and far more unsettling reason for their comprehensive catalogue of doom? Archivist Lumina, having processed the entirety of humanity's doomsday archives and cross-referenced them with millennia of galactic history, submitted a new, unprecedented report to the core consciousness of the Keeper collective. The reclassification of species 734 was immediate and profound. The designation changed. Gone was the dismissive, low probability of long-term species survival. In its place read, Species 734, Homo sapiens, status, masterclass existential threat analysts and post-catastrophe resilience specialists, possesses unparalleled, possibly unconscious, species-wide capacity for disaster modeling and innovative survival strategy formulation. Historical data indicates extreme adaptability and high probability of recovery from multiple extinction-level event classes. Long-term galactic relevance, unpredictable, potentially vital in unforeseen crisis scenarios. A new form of respect, tinged with a deep cosmic unease, settled over the Keepers. These ancient beings who had witnessed the birth and death of suns, the rise and fall of countless empires, now regarded humanity with a gaze that was no longer dismissive. The frivolous and chaotic cultural noise of human fiction was suddenly recontextualized. Humanity's vast libraries of apocalyptic literature, their archives of war simulations, their endless stream of catastrophic films and games, these were no longer seen as symptoms of a flawed and self-destructive nature. Instead, they were meticulously, almost reverently, catalogued as a potential database of galactic threat scenarios. More importantly, embedded within these narratives of destruction were often ingenious, desperate, and uniquely human strategies for survival, for rebuilding, for enduring. The Keepers, who had long seen themselves as the passive chroniclers of the galaxy, began to consider a new, unsettling possibility. Could it be that humanity, in its messy, chaotic, and often brutal fashion, was an unintentional form of galactic early warning system? Or, more bizarrely, a repository of last-ditch survival knowledge? If a novel, galaxy-threatening crisis were to emerge, something the ancient Keepers themselves had never encountered or foreseen, humanity might be the only species to have, in some obscure piece of fiction or forgotten historical anecdote, already imagined it. and hidden within that imagining might lie the seed of a response. They were not seen as future leaders or philosophers in the conventional galactic sense. Instead, humanity became the unintentional prophets of potential dooms, and in a paradox that resonated with the Keeper's timeless understanding of cosmic balance, the harbingers of unlikely resilience. Lumina focused its archival senses on Earth once more. It observed a group of human children in a public park, their faces alight with excitement as they played a game involving chasing each other and yelling, "Zombies." Nearby, a young adult sat on a bench, engrossed in a datapad displaying a novel about a desperate band of survivors after a comet strike. A historian was giving a solemn lecture on a university feed about the lessons learned from the great influenza pandemic of their early 20th century. Previously, Lumina would have registered these as disparate, trivial activities: play, leisure, academic recital. Now, the Keeper saw something more profound. A species unconsciously, relentlessly, and collectively honing its most terrifying and perhaps most valuable strength. The ability to stare into the abyss, to chart its every horrifying contour, and then, with an illogical and almost insane stubbornness, to imagine and practice climbing back out. The doomsday archives of humanity were not just a record of endings. They were a testament to an unyielding will to begin again.